Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my initial reaction for Doctor Who The Star Beast, the first of the 60th anniversary specials that featured David Tennant returning as the Doctor alongside Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, and of course Russell T Davies returning to pen these episodes as the showrunner, a role he had back in 2005 to 2010, obviously the era in which David Tennant and Catherine Tate were on the show. Now obviously these episodes have been very, very hotly anticipated by the fans. It's been over a year since the last Doctor Who episodes, The Power of the Doctor, the longest gap between Doctor Who episodes since it came back in 2005. So it's been quite a wait, and people have been really hotly anticipating these episodes. Obviously if you've been keeping up to date with my thoughts, you'd know that I actually haven't been, really, I'll be honest. I've been quite cynical about this whole idea ever since RTD was announced, and more specifically when it was announced that David Tennant would be the 14th Doctor. It's always just been, to me, a very desperate attempt from the BBC to get people who stopped watching the show back in the day to return to the show. You can see the desperation from the BBC. It's not a fluid decision, shall we say, and it kind of goes against everything I like about Doctor Who, the whole idea that it's different people working on it all the time, the show constantly changing, adapting, moving forward, evolving, kind of completely negating the philosophy of the show, just in a desperate move to bring people back. It always seemed very, desperate from me, and I couldn't stop myself from looking at it in a very cynical viewpoint, which is annoying because I love David Tennant, I love Catherine Tate, and I want to get excited about the show again, but I couldn't help but feel very cynically about these set of specials, and I'm much more excited about Ncuti Gatwa's episodes than I am about these. But it was kind of in a few hours leading up to this episode, I was thinking, I may not like the reason why these guys are coming back, but at the end of the day, David Tennant is back, and I like David Tennant, so let's sit down and enjoy these specials for what they are, which could be some very, very good Doctor Who, and there's been some really cool stuff in the trailer, Beat the Meep, the Toy Maker, some really cool stuff. So regardless of what I think of the behind the scenes stuff, let's sit down and try and enjoy these episodes. And I sat down and watched The Star Beast, and what did I think? I'm really sorry to say, I didn't like it, and I was worried this would happen. I was really worried this would happen, because everyone's presuming that these episodes are going to be really good, and I was really worried that, well, what if the possibility that no one's really thinking about, what if they're not? And this episode wasn't very good at all, and it's annoying because everyone else seems to really love it, and I don't want to seem like that one negative Nancy who is, just hates Doctor Who, despite calling themselves a fan, but I just didn't really like this episode. It was pretty immediate as well. It just felt really, really rushed and fast-paced right from the off. That initial opening of the recap of what happened in the Doctor and Donna story didn't work for me. It was really weird. It felt a bit cheap, like it was just David Tennant. Alright David, let's stand in front of a green screen. It was really weird just talking to the camera, but out of universe, because it's not canon. It was just a bit weird. I think a more conventional recap would have been a lot better. Or even have the Doctor just talking to the camera in the TARDIS, a la Peter Capaldi in Before the Flood. This just didn't really work for me. So already I was like, that's a bit of a weird choice. And then we see the titles, and again, I don't know if it's just when you become so ingrained in the fan scene of Doctor Who, and you see fan-made title sequences, and you hear fan-made themes, and you see fan-made TARDIS concept designs, that then when you see something new in the show, instantly you're like, that seems like a fan-made thing. And I don't know whether that's just Doctor Who fan brain. I'm just a bit too obsessed with the show. But as soon as I saw that title sequence, I thought, that's a fan-made title sequence. It looked like it. And the theme, I purposely held off from listening to the theme, actually, because I know it got released ages ago. But I was like, I don't want to listen to it divorced from it. I want to have that surprise when I see the titles to hear that theme. It was just very naff, generic Doctor Who theme, really. And this is the thing that I had an issue with bringing Murray Gold back, is that I love Murray Gold, but he's worked on the show for a bloody good while, and there's only so many versions of the Doctor Who theme that you can come up with, so many different variations before you've just got nothing left in the tank. And it seemed very much like this here. It was very much a bit like the 7B theme, where it's like, that's a fine theme, but, you know, it's just a bit generic. I did like some of the weird different angles we got in the title sequence, though, but overall, it was a bit cheap, and the way that the logo just came in, like it was like a PNG, really weird. It was not using the if you're using the diamond logo, you have it come for a diamond vortex. That's the whole point of the logo. If you're not going to do that, then why have that logo at all? Just felt a bit weird. But anyway, then the story starts, and it was way too fast paced for me. Instantly as I was watching, I was like, oh my god, this is zipping by really quickly, way too quickly, nothing could breathe. That he gets out of the TARDIS and then almost immediately meets Donna, and it's like, what? That was way too quick. Oh, we're doing this now, we're meeting them instantly. He gets out of the TARDIS, instantly meets her, spaceship instantly crashes, and then he somehow gets into a taxi with Donna's husband, then, you know, instantly goes to the crashed spaceship, then Donna's daughter Rose instantly meets the Meep, and then the Doctor instantly goes from unit to Donna's house, and it's like, oh my god, this is bam, 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 way too quickly, to the point that you can't even really process what's going on. Nothing really lands, which doesn't work for this story. You don't get a feel of who David Tennant's Doctor is before he instantly meets Donna, and you don't really get a feeling of who Donna is before she instantly meets the Doctor. And what are the chances that they just meet, like, right there, and then instantly the spaceship would land? And I know it's kind of said to be, oh, what a coincidence that this is all happening, and maybe we'll get a good answer to it. But in terms of this story and the pacing, it really didn't work for me. And I think this story really suffers from a poor resolution, and I'll get onto that later, but it suffers really poorly from pacing. It's the biggest issue with this story. It's way too fast. And I think the problem is I've never read the Star Beast comic, so I don't know what pace that goes at, how long it is, and what stuff they cut out for this. But it feels like this story of the comic strip of the Doctor and the Star Beast was not suited to A, the runtime of this episode, and B, it did not fit with meshing it with all the reintroduction of Donna stuff. So it did not work at all for me, because there's just not enough time. There's not enough time to devote. All the Donna stuff has to go through really quickly, and all the Star Beast stuff has to go at a breakneck pace, to the point that you don't spend enough time with the Meep before it turns evil, that then the revelation just does not hit. Maybe it's because I knew the Meep was going to turn evil, so it wasn't, you know, a revelation for me. I knew that was coming. But even so, it just didn't feel like you got enough scenes with the Meep for that to really hit. And again, I don't know what the comic's like, but I'd imagine you really need to build up that relationship between, obviously, the companion in the comic, Rose, Noble in this story. You need to really build up the relationship between Rose and the Meep, a la E.T. and the kid in E.T. style, for that actual revelation to actually hit. But it never does. You don't spend enough time with Rose and the Meep before the story starts. You've not got enough downtime in this story. You don't have enough downtime with Tennant and the regeneration to really get a feel of his Doctor. You don't get enough downtime exploring Donna's life. You don't get enough downtime with the Meep and Rose. So therefore, the story just kind of falls flat in lots of ways. And as I said, yeah, the pacing just doesn't work. Yeah, that instantly, and I knew as I was watching it, when the Doctor instantly meets Donna, I was like, we're rushing through this story, aren't we? And yeah, he just goes way too quick. As I said, Rose meets the Meep, then Donna meets the Meep, then the Doctor meets the Meep, but oh no, there's soldiers, and oh no, there's rough warriors, and oh, we need to escape from the buildings, but oh no, the Meep's evil now, and oh, now the Meep's doing something. And no, we need to save it, but oh, Donna, what if you die? But oh no, that doesn't matter anyway. And it's like, yeah, it's just way too fast-paced. The story doesn't really feel like a story. Because if I didn't know this was based on a comic, I would have thought this story is really crap. Because there's just nothing to it. Like, yeah, sure, you've got the Meep there, and you've got the soldiers after the Meep. But there's no real consequences or any type of scope to this story, really. Nothing really happens. The Meep goes to a house, then the Meep gets taken out of the house, reveals it's evil, then the Doctor gets put into a rocket, that's essentially all that happens in this story. There's no wider reaction from the general public. There's no real shown consequences of what the Meep's going to do. Not really any scale to it. You've not really got any of your key players in there. It does feel a bit like a classic Doctor Who episode where they could only afford 2 Wraith Warrior costumes, so that's why you've only got 2. You know, which, if anything, it's very Doctor Who in that sense then. But yeah, it just felt that there were limitations, and I really do think it was the runtime. I don't think the Meep story works with the Dr. Donna story, because by focusing so much on having to reintroduce Donna, set up her daughter, set up all this stuff about what happened on screen, set up all this stuff to do with the Dr. Donna, constantly go over that, what happened to Wilf, what will happen if Donna remembers, all this sorts of stuff, that ultimately you don't have time to focus on the Meep storyline. So then the Meep storyline either feels really rushed or really paper thin, and I think it feels like both. And to the point that the actual mechanics of the Starbeast story that are in this episode don't actually work. As I've said, you don't get enough time spent with Rose and the Meep for that relationship to work at all. So if you don't know the actual comic book story, essentially who finds the Meep in that story is not Rose, it's a girl, she's like a schoolgirl, and essentially she becomes the companion for the story. So she finds the Meep, and then that's how she gets brought into the story, and then meets the Doctor. It's the 4th Doctor in the comic, and then obviously he has to find her. That's how all this stuff sort of happens, and that's how she gets brought into the story, and then eventually, after it's all said and done, goes off into the TARDIS and goes on adventures. And that works. You can imagine how the crux of this story would work really well for a first companion story, a companion introduction. She gets introduced to aliens through the Meep. You can imagine how that would work really well. But the problem is by putting that into this story, it doesn't work, because it's Rose who finds the Meep, but she's not the companion of the story, Donna is, so therefore you don't actually have that much time spent devoted to her and the Meep. So then the reveal of who the Meep is doesn't work, because Donna never softened to the Meep. You know, we didn't spend enough time with the Meep to really feel sorry for it. You know, it's not actually that long between the Meep reveals its tragic backstory and it's revealed that it's a lie. So it doesn't work. And as I said, had you had, you know, Donna be more so a background supporting character, and Rose still takes centre stage and Donna's just kind of there as nostalgia, and Rose, you know, despite Donna being there, Rose still kind of maintains the primary companion. She fills that role, you know, it's focused more on her and the Meep, and then it's her who goes into the TARDIS for adventures, and Donna kind of, maybe Donna never gets her memories back, similar to the End of Time, how Donna's like a background character in that story. And then the focus is on Rose, and then she's the one who gets to go off on the adventures and kind of continue her mum's legacy, despite the fact her mum can't remember. That could have been quite sweet, and I think the story really would have served a purpose at that point, because you're setting up that character. But because Rose isn't the companion, as I said, the Meep stuff doesn't work, but then it also puts Donna in a very precarious position, because therefore it feels like a very pointless story. It feels like, yeah, sure, Donna got her memories back, and we'll get onto that later. But in terms of the actual storyline this was going for, it didn't filter into that at all. There's nothing about this specific storyline that had anything to do with Donna and getting her memories back and stuff. So it felt like Rusty Davies wanted to adapt this storyline. And at first when I heard he was doing this, I thought, oh, that's really good. And I really love adapting an obscure 80s Tom Baker comic. That's actually quite cool. But I don't think meshing it with the Doctor and Donna stuff works, because I don't think the narrative got to work in the way that I'm sure it does in the comic, because everything felt flat. The plot felt paper thin and didn't really go anywhere, and that's because you can't spend enough time on it, because you've got to spend so much time on Donna's family and reintroducing Donna and setting up the mystery and all that sort of stuff. But even when doing that, it doesn't even feel like that gets enough added to it. Even that feels rushed. It's 2 storylines fighting for control of the narrative, neither of which really get enough screen time to make them satisfying in an episode that is not long enough to do either, you know, satisfactory. And I think the thing is that this storyline doesn't complement the Donna storyline. It clashes. And as I said, you either have Rose the focus remain on her and she becomes the companion at the end. Or it's Donna who finds the Meep and you don't have Rose there, or you don't have her as, finding the Meep. It's Donna who finds the Meep. Maybe that's how she gets brought into, aliens and that kind of stuff. And that could have worked. But by trying to do both, trying to have your cake and eat it, the Meep storyline really suffers. And that's the thing in this story. The storyline was just so nothing. And I think for lots of it, I thought, oh, this is really fast-paced, way too fast-paced, and it's not really working for me. But I think for most of the story I was sucked in by David Tennant being, just charismatic, although I think not enough time is spent with him to really establish who he is as the 14th Doctor, in inverted commas. And what is his state now? Who is he? How does he feel? How is his state after just coming off of Jodie Whittaker? What's his status quo now? But because you've got to have him land immediately, bump into Donna, then immediately go to the crashed spaceship, you don't get enough time to really get with him. But in terms of performance, for what was in the script, which to be honest, I didn't think, as I said, there's not enough downtime with Tennant, because it's so fast-paced. Obviously Tennant, he can play the Doctor well, so he kind of sucked me in for a bit, and I was enjoying the Meep. I'll be real, so I was enjoying the Meep, Beep the Meep, as we all call Beep, but he's never really referred to in this episode apart from one line. So I'll refer to them as the Meep, because that's what they're called in this story rather than Beep, the Meep. But yeah, the Meep, I thought was lovely. Yeah, he's so cute and cuddly, but also, he's got really nice interactions with Rose, and I was buying into the storyline they were trying to tell, and I just love the Meep. I want a plushy Meep, a cuddly little Meep for Christmas. But yeah, I think the special effects, the combination of CGI and practical effects, the vocal performance by Miriam Margolyes, it was brilliant of capturing the Meep to life, and I was enjoying the Meep's little interactions. So Tennant and the Meep sucked me in, I'll be honest. Sucked me in for most of the story, that even though I was thinking this is really fast-paced, and I'm not quite a fan of that I was still enjoying it because of that, the Meep and Tennant. But then when you get to the point where it's revealed the Meep's evil, which obviously I knew was coming anyway, but as soon as at that point, it just broke for me, and I was like, oh, well, the Meep's evil, despite the fact we didn't spend enough time setting up the Meep. And yeah, that's when the episode went from, it's not really working for me, but it's still enjoyable, to, this isn't that great. And as soon as that's where the story was going, it recontextualises the rest of it as being quite shoddy foundations for the story, really. And yeah, then you just get the stuff with Doctor and Donna, in the spaceship, and the Doctor realises that, he's going to have to give Donna's memories back in order to save London, which felt very contrived. Tennant's acting's phenomenal. He's really good in that, and there's a layer of emotion that Tennant shows in that I don't really feel like we saw from him as the Doctor originally, back in his original run. So I thought that was really interesting, and if we're bringing Tennant back to do more stuff like that, that could be really cool. But ultimately, that sequence felt really contrived to me. The barrier coming up, why the Doctor couldn't have just told Donna the controls. Like, he didn't need to give her memories back. I know he says he only has a finite amount of time, but come on, you could have at least tried. It felt very contrived to get her to have her memories back. And you're really telling me that this is the scenario that he has to bring her memories back for? The stakes never felt tangible. The Meep never felt threatening. And yeah, the stakes didn't feel that big. It didn't feel like a destructive thing, even though that's what the episode's telling you. It doesn't show that, and that's not how it was built up. The episode had been so kind of light, fluffy and comedic the entire time, that to all of a sudden do a complete 180 and have this serious thing and pretend it's going to be dramatic, it just did not work for me at all, and it did not feel believable to me that, yeah, this is the scenario that's going to give him to bring her memories back. And then he does it, and it's just, I don't want to call it terrible, because I don't want to be mean about Doctor Who. I'd like to think I used to be quite mean about it and used to get a bit angry about stuff, like Resolution and The Timeless Children. If you were back in the day subscribed to this channel and remember those reviews, you'd know that I used to get very, very annoyed when Doctor Who would be crap, essentially. And now I'm matured, I was a child back then, I'm not anymore. I'd like to say I'm matured. I don't need to do the kind of fake outrage about this sort of stuff, and I don't like being hyperbolic and saying stuff was really rubbish, But it was, it just didn't work for me. The whole stuff that, the Doctor Donna doesn't matter anymore, it doesn't have consequences on you because you had a kid? What? Like, yeah, maybe it makes sense, but it's just so naff. It's like, that's just such a rubbish way to boil down such an amazing conflict in a previous story. You've got all this Time Lord energy in your head, and unless I erase your memories, you will die. But no, because it was two personalities, if you share it with another person, then it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, why didn't the Doctor do that originally in Journey's End? If he could have done that. Yeah, and then the stuff about, she was saying binary, and because Rose is non-binary, that's fine. And it's like, that just felt like a really crap joke. Like someone was thinking, Donna says binary, and non-binary people, it felt like, that's like a silly dad joke, but whatever, yeah. And then they actually put that into the resolution of the episode. Yeah, that was just really weird to me. That just did not land for me. It felt like a really contrived and crap ending for the excuse of a non-binary joke, which, yeah, what? And it's really weird because I actually thought Rose and how they handled her being transgender was really brilliantly done in this episode. It was clearly a lot of thought put into it, and I always knew it was going to be handled well because Russ was really good at, handling these sorts of things, and you knew he would handle this subject with care. And I was always, I was quite excited to see some actual, really good, high-profile, focused trans representation in Doctor Who, because we've not had enough of it. And to see a major player like Rose, and obviously Yasmin Finney, is, an actress who has been praised a lot in stuff like Heartstopper, so I was excited to see what she'd do. And for the most part, I thought she was really good in this episode. As I said, they need to focus on her relationship with Meep a bit more, but for what she was doing, I thought she was really good, and yeah, I thought they handled her trans representation really well. I was actually surprised they featured her getting, being bullied for being trans, which I didn't think they'd do. But I'm glad they did show that because it's realistic. It is what would happen at that age as someone, who has been in British schools. Homophobic, transphobic bullying. You'd like to think it doesn't happen, but it does. So, it was nice to shed a light on that happening and why that is so much of an issue. So for the most part, I thought the trans representation was really good with her. But then the non-binary joke, it was just so weird. Like, it felt really out of, tone with the rest of the representation. Like, maybe non-binary people or trans people, you come in the comments and say whether you thought that joke was a bit, offensive, a bit crap, or if you thought it did work, because obviously I'm not non-binary or trans, so I can't really say. But it just didn't really work for me, and ultimately it felt like a really crap way to undermine Journey's End, which is always the problem I did have with bringing Donna back and bringing her back her memories. I was never a fan of that idea, because at the end of the day, you are undoing the best companion exit in Journey's End. You are undoing that, so by undoing that tragedy, you've got to have a bloody good reason for doing it. And a good explanation, and they didn't really have either in this episode. The explanation, it was just rubbish. I never bought this as the big stake situation that you need to bring her memories back like they did. And just the whole explanation of her, she had a daughter, so it doesn't matter anymore. And it's like, what is that? Was it that easy? And then the whole idea of, there are all these clues, the shed was her TARDIS, and all the toys were based on previous adventures. And call me stupid, and call me unattentive. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. But I swear none of the toys we saw were based on any monsters from Series 4. None of them were. Apart from that one that supposedly looks like a Dalek but doesn't. We never saw the Ooze, the Pyrovile, the Cyberman, in which case is there a Cyberman story with Donna that we didn't see? But yeah, we didn't see any of that, so they act like this was seeded in. But it wasn't. There was no hint at that being the case at all. So when it kind of does a really smug, the clues were there all along, but you didn't show us the clues. So, you can't, that doesn't work. And just the idea of, we could keep the Dr. Donna in us, but we're just going to let it go. And then it goes off. It's like, what? It was that easy. It was that easy, was it? The whole high-stakes stuff in Journey's End, just completely undone. So easily and so flippantly. It just did not work for me at all. As I said, it was a pretty, not great, but average fluff for most of it. And then that resolution not only just doesn't work for the story it's in, it's such a Deus Ex Machina. It just doesn't work for me. It feels too easy, and it's not connected to the Meep stuff at all. I'd be really interested to see how they actually wrap the story up in the original comic, because obviously it wouldn't have had anything to do with the Doctor Donna or anything like that. But yeah, I'd be really interested to see how they tied that up in that, because yeah, this resolution did not work for me. And not only did it feel too easy in the story, it felt too easy given what it was undoing. It just didn't work for me at all. And I said, yeah, it just didn't work. And it was all very cheesy with, we are the Doctor Donna. It just didn't work for me. It's just really crap. I can't really say it in any other way. Yeah, I didn't like it, and I don't think it justified bringing Donna's memories back. It didn't justify that for me. It just didn't work, at all. It was just a really rubbish resolution to a not great but kind of fluffy story. That was just a really bad resolution, and it felt really rushed, and you wouldn't have thought it was the same person writing it who wrote Journey's End, because it didn't feel like there was enough care given to the impact of that ending, to be honest. It was just, it was undone very quickly and flippantly, and didn't like that at all. And I don't think it works as a resolution in isolation for this story. It felt too easy, felt too quick, and then it just really make the whole storyline with the Meep feel really thin, really paper thin, really like a lot of nothingness, really. Such a weak storyline. And if I didn't know this was a comic, I'd say that's such a weak storyline. That what even was that? But knowing it was based on the comic, I have to think it was definitely time constraints and mashing it together with a storyline to do with Donna that doesn't really fit, that made this storyline come across as really rubbish, because I can imagine it's great in the comic, and I can see the idea of the Meep starting off as cute and cuddly and then the reveal that it's evil like you wouldn't expect, and having that as a way to introduce a new companion working really well in the comic. But unfortunately it just didn't work in execution wise for this, because it's far too fast paced, and as I said, the episode's just constantly bombing along, no levity, no time for it to breathe, and no time to explore in depth anything. The pacing was truly terrible, and I think that is the worst thing about this episode, was the pacing. It did not work for me. But yeah, that resolution was crap as well. And then they go off into the TARDIS, and Donna goes in. The new TARDIS, it's going to sound like I'm someone who can't be pleased, and I know it is, because on paper, it's a dream TARDIS console room. It's massive. It really shows the dimensions of the TARDIS. We finally got a massive room, doorways going everywhere, different levels. It looks, in concept, really cool, and someone said it did look like one of the concept arts that you see gets designed for every TARDIS that they never properly make because they don't have enough money to make it, but they've obviously been given a lot of money and they made this big set, and it should work for me, but it just looked really cheap. It looked massive. Like, it felt like they put so much effort into making it big that it's scope over, product. By making it big, they had to cheapen out on making it not look cheap. Because it looks cheap, it looked plasticky, it didn't look metal like, let's say, the Smith Capaldi one did. And it looked too white, which I know is the classic series thing, but having this massive room for white, it felt really sterile. And yeah, just really cheap, like a big voidless room. So in concept, I'd really like it. In execution, I didn't really. The console as well, I don't know, it's just something about it. It didn't really. I don't think in execution it looked that good, even though in concept I'm sure it looked amazing. But then Donna tips coffee on the console in a very sitcom-y fashion. I didn't really like it. It felt like it felt scripted. It didn't feel that's a natural reaction from Donna. It's like, oh, I've knocked coffee over. But, it felt like something like a sitcom side character would do as a little bit. Like, oops, I've knocked the coffee over. It didn't feel very natural for Donna to do. And is that really the reason the TARDIS is going haywire? That was a bit crap. Oh, it's because coffee was poured onto the console. Could you not find a better reason than that? Really? But also, if you are on Twitter, and if you have read the leaks of these specials, then you would know that this episode has followed the leak pretty well. Now, I don't usually look at leaks. As I said, I didn't listen to the theme tune when it was officially announced because I wanted to hear it on the day. The only reason I read the leaks is because people were saying, preemptively, this is so ridiculous that this can't be real. This has got to be fake. So I read it And the storylines in the leaks for these specials are awful. Truly awful. Some of the worst ideas Doctor Who's ever had. And worse than some of the stuff in the Chibnall era. Like, if you thought Doctor Who was going to stop being controversial and making really odd decisions, you'd be wrong. But I thought, some of that stuff is so ridiculous, that will never happen. And especially Russell, and especially the whole brand statement of this being to bring back Doctor Who like you remember it, that they wouldn't do anything like that. But then this episode, beat for beat, essentially plays along. And as soon as we got to that resolution where Donna gets the memories back and it's going into Rose because they are the Dr. Donna, and then Donna spills coffee onto the console. So as soon as he said, do you want a coffee? I was like, no, we're doing this dance. The leaks might be real. And if they are, God help me. But yeah, that was, I wasn't a fan of that. And also, I want to talk about Catherine Tate as Donna, because maybe it's just me, but I feel like in the quieter moments, she was good, great actress. But then in her fight, as soon as she gets her memories back, I don't know what it was, but I was not impressed with her performance. And she does not have that same chemistry with David Tennant that she used to, which is odd because in behind the scenes stuff, they do. They bounce off each other really well. But then when that scene where they're in the TARDIS, I was just thinking, you don't have the same chemistry that you used to. Something isn't clicking here. And I don't know what it is, and I don't know if that's going to continue into the other specials, but they just didn't seem to gel as well as they used to. And I don't know what that is, but I certainly noticed that dynamic didn't really seem to click quite as well. A little more side points. What the hell was going on with the sonic screwdriver? Can, bring up, holograms and can make force barriers? What? Really weird. Like, if we were bothered about the Sonic becoming overpowered before and being used all the time in Jodie's era, bloody hell, as Russell took it up a notch in this one. Like, what was it doing? It was just like a magic wand. Like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, what? That's not what the Sonic screwdriver is. It's not a magic wand. Because now the Doctor essentially do anything as he's being shot at. Why doesn't he bring up a barrier? It's going to create lots of plot holes. Honestly, I just want the Pterodactyls to come and just burn the Sonic. I'll be honest. I'm sick of it. And I really hope we don't see more of this ridiculousness with the Sonic that we saw in this. And also, the monsters. As I said, I thought that Beep the Meep was a great design, a great use of CGI and practical effects. A real achievement, actually. And I thought the creation of the Beep as a whole was really good. The Wraith Warriors, I thought looked stupid. I thought they looked really silly. And felt like something out of CBBC. In fact, the whole bit, the tone, and then you've got the little kid who was supposed to be Rose's age, but looked about 12, so maybe they could have casted someone who actually looked her age, because that looked really silly. But having him, and then you've got the Wraith Warriors and the Meep and the comic tone, it felt like something out of CBBC. It felt like something out of the Sarah Jane Adventures. It didn't feel like Doctor Who. And I love my camp rubbery monsters, but all I could think of is, if you're someone coming back to Doctor Who and you're seeing this, I don't think this is going to make you come in to watch it. It felt really kiddie. And they felt like something out of CBBC, and they didn't look that great. And if I come back, I thought, oh bloody hell, Doctor Who's not got much money into it, because they look rubbish. And I know it's because they're a flawless translation of them in the comics, and they, on the basis of that, they look great. But in terms of being a realistic monster in 2023's Doctor Who, I don't think they really worked, and I think it kind of sent the whole thing up to be a bit CBBC-ish, a bit kiddie. And the whole tone I don't think really worked. It was way too comedic. And maybe that's what you want to do for this type of story, but then that doesn't mesh well with that, where it just takes a drastic turn and goes really dramatic at the end and tries to create these stakes of London, that's going to be exploded or whatever. It didn't work. It did not mesh well. The tonal whiplash, my neck's still hurting from it. But yeah, it did kind of feel a bit CBBC-ish. And yeah, just the music, really. The music and the direction. Rachel Talalay's direction was fine. There's some good bits in it, but usually if you're going back to, maybe it's the material she's been given, because if you think of stuff like, Well Enough and Time the Doctor Falls, Heaven Sent Hellbent, those are episodes that really need to push what you'd expect from typical Doctor Who direction, and they're really great stories, and they are visually amazing. Whereas this story, obviously there's not much to it. It's a bit, middle of the road, so there wasn't that much stuff for Rachel Talalay to really bring to this. It was an average looking Doctor Who episode. It wasn't bad, but if you told me she directed this, I wouldn't have guessed, because it's not an amazing, flawless thing visually like some of her other stories. And Murray's music was fine, you know, I didn't notice it that much. There was one bit where he plays I Am the Doctor, and I was like, what is that I Am the Doctor I'm hearing? Which I'm not a fan of, because at the end of the day it's Matt Smith's theme, and it feels really out of place when you give it to anyone other than Matt Smith, so it didn't really work for me. Especially as a weird, like, playing it for Donna, it was like, oh, what? But yeah, overall, this story just didn't really land for me, guys, and I'm really sorry, because I didn't want to be saying this, but it was just really naff, it was just really flat, the resolution was rubbish, and the story as a whole, yeah, was just light fluff, nothingness, way too fast-paced for its own good, and the Meep stuff did not mesh well with the Doctor Donna stuff, and overall we've come out with both elements not really being satisfying. You've tried to do too much, and ultimately you've ended up doing something very little by doing too much. Less is more. If you wanted to do a Star Beast story, adapt the Star Beast. If you want to do a story about Donna and her family, and her getting her memories back, commit to a story about that. By trying to do both at the same time, you haven't really done anything, because this story just really didn't work for me. It didn't impress me, and it wasn't any better than a Jodie episode, to be honest. If you'd swap David Tennant out with Jodie Whittaker, this story, you know, it would be something I would expect in the previous era. It wasn't particularly well written. And yeah, it wasn't a return to form, to be honest. The episode was still at a very low quality. And, you know, maybe this was the episode we just had to have. Maybe this was just an episode the pill we had to swallow to get Donna to have her memories back, and now the status quo is resolved, the next two stories will be really good. And I hope that's the case. I hope this is just a not so great platform to better stories. But I just can't help but feel like this was the episode that needed to hook people back into the show. And having watched that, I just don't really get the vibe that it would have done that. I can't imagine someone having not watched Doctor Who for a while and tuning into it and really feeling as if that was any good and thinking, yeah, I'm going to stick around for this. I just don't feel that. I feel it was the Star Beast was the complete wrong story to adapt for this kind of story that Russell wanted to tell with his other elements. It didn't work at all. And yeah, the story just wasn't really good as a result. And as I said, I'm disappointed because I really wanted this to be a return to form, because I haven't consistently liked Doctor Who for a very long while. And I wanted this to be the moment when I did. But unfortunately, it just wasn't. And I'm sad to say, because I really wanted it to be good. But hey ho, what can you do really, you know? At the end of the day, it wasn't any better than a Jodie Whittaker episode, and I'll be interested to see what people think of this. Looking on it, people seem to really like it, and I do wonder how much of that is just due to David Tennant and Rusty Davies' name on the script, and if this same story was written by Chibnall and featuring Jodie Whittaker, if people would have the same opinions on that. I'm not going to say yes or no, but it's kind of a thing I have with, I think people wanted to like this story because it's Russell and Tennant involved. And I think if you had the exact same script but someone else was writing it, I think that ultimately people's opinions might be a bit different. But hey ho, I can only speculate on that. But yeah, overall this review's been a bit down, a bit negative, I'll be honest, and I didn't want it to be this way. And there were positives. I thought Tennant's performance was good. I enjoyed Rose for the small scenes she was in, but I feel like her character really should have been expanded upon for this story to work. And I liked the Meep for the most part, but again, I feel like that character was really underserved, and for the twist to work you need to commit a lot more to having scenes and building up that character. So much of what worked for this story almost worked for me, but it didn't quite, you know. And yeah, a couple more scenes that I thought of was the Donna stuff with her giving away the money. I didn't like, because I don't like the idea of, oh, Donna, you know, had subliminal stuff to act more like the Doctor even when she forgot her memories. When the whole tragedy of Journey's End is that she doesn't retain any of that. She goes back to the person she was before she met the Doctor, that heavily flawed person who wouldn't have given away the money to charity. But that's the person she was before she met the Doctor, and that's the person she goes back to, because that's the tragedy of having her experience where the Doctor erased. That's the tragedy of it. So even then, even though the story undoes the tragedy anyway, it softens the tragedy a bit in what it's saying, and I wasn't a big fan of that. And also the moment with Wilf. I know they filmed it before Bernard Cribbins died, and the scene would have worked a lot better if Bernard Cribbins hadn't died, but the fake out death with Wilf, knowing that Bernard Cribbins actually died, and it's like, oh no, silly, he's still alive, after making you think that Wilfred died in universe, it just felt in really poor taste. I mean, it just felt in really poor taste. And I know it wouldn't have been like that if Bernard Cribbins was still alive, but Bernard Cribbins did die, so the scene felt in really poor taste to me. That gag around the fact that Wilf might have died, really poor taste. It did not land for me at all. But yeah, overall this story, it was just a bit naff really, as I've said, way too fast paced. Storylines clashing for screen time, neither, got enough work on them to feel satisfying. Completely rushed. Main plot that felt paper thin, and a really poor resolution that feels crap in the episode of itself and completely undermines the sacrifice of Journey's End so flippantly. Yeah, it just didn't work for me, and all I can hope is that this story is a bit of a crap starting point and launchpad for bigger and better stories that we'll get in the next couple of weeks. And I honestly hope they are, because while Blue Yonder, we know nothing about that episode, didn't even get a next time trailer, and obviously it's filmed all in studio, so I'm really hoping that there are some surprises in there, and maybe we might see some returning characters. Maybe Matt Smith might come back, but I'm not holding up my breath on that one as much as I'd love it to happen. I'm not going to go into the episode thinking that he'll come back, because when he inevitably don't, I'll only end up being disappointed. But what I really hope is the episode's a bit abstract, a bit out there, and really high concept Doctor Who. Because I think the problem is this felt a bit like Partners in Crime. But in my opinion, season openers don't need to be routine pedestrian running around Doctor Who. To get people hooked on Doctor Who, in my opinion, you need to show them the best of what Doctor Who can be as a show. And that's putting lots of effort into making a really, truly phenomenal episode of Doctor Who, rather than making a purposely pedestrian episode to try and hook people in. I don't think it worked back in the day. I don't think stuff like New Earth or Partners in Crime really work. And I don't think it worked here. But I hope next week's is actually really good high concept Doctor Who, and an idea that Russell really feels passionate about, because it didn't really feel like he really believed in the story of the Star Beast that much to me. But yeah, whatever, that's my 2 cents on Doctor Who and the Star Beast. What do you think? Jot your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm sure my opinion is very different to what everyone else is saying, so it's probably quite divisive, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And also, thank you guys for all the views on my Davros video. I hadn't made a video in almost a year when I uploaded that video. It was very rambly, and as I said, I hadn't made a video for bloody ages, so I was worried that it wouldn't get many views. But the fact that it's got over 1k views and is my second most popular video, I know it was on a trending topic, but I was even, by the time the video got uploaded, a couple days late to the release of Children News Special anyway, so I was really surprised that the video got so many views and so many comments of people engaging with it as well. It was really nice to see, actually, because I didn't expect it, so the amount of people watching it and tuning in and subscribing was really cool to see, so thanks guys so much for that. But yeah, join me next week as I'll return to review Wild Blue Yonder. As I said, hopefully it's better than this episode, because I don't like disliking Doctor Who. I don't like being cynical about my favourite show. And I really didn't want to dislike this, but unfortunately, it just didn't really land for me. Unfortunately, guys, it was just a bit naff, is really all I can describe it as, in layman's terms. And yeah, hopefully next week's is better. I certainly hope it is. But I'd be interested to see what the viewing figures were like and what the wider public thought of this episode, because the BBC's banking so much on this bringing everyone back and being incredibly successful. And if it's not, well, I do worry a bit for Doctor Who's future. But yeah, whatever you think, drop it in the comment section below. Like and subscribe for my review coming next week. And yeah, happy 60th anniversary Doctor Who. Thank you guys for watching, and of course, a goodbye.